friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, Dr. Khandelwal has been far too generous with the introduction that he gave. It was the courage of conviction of people like him who have contributed to the public sector banking story of India. We were small cogs in the wheel, babus sitting in government, in our own ivory towers, no accountability. So if they had to deliver, the least we could do was hold hands, and that's all that happened. But I'm indeed very honored, privileged to be amongst all of you today. And I'm quite surprised and delighted that Mr. Kumar Bagrodia reached out to me and asked me to come and speak with you all, interact with you all. And while I was sitting there and Swamiji was speaking, I was asking myself this question: what am I doing here? An auditor, let alone want to see an auditor, nobody wants to hear an auditor. He's one of those things, one of those essential things that one has to just about put up with, and all of you run very large companies. The greatest distance that you can have from an auditor, you would like to maintain that distance. So I was wondering early morning on a Friday morning, what am I doing here, when there were such lovely discourses that one had the opportunity to hear, and I'm so happy that I could hear Swamiji today. But I must compliment Leap Vault, TIS, Government of India, and others who are contributing to this conference for holding the 6th summit today. And when I got an email from Mr. Kumar Bagrodia, I was addressing him as Bagrodia Saab and Mr. Kumar Bagrodia. When I met him, I said, my God, what is he? He's lesser than the age of my son. But look at the tremendous organizational capability that Leap Vault has been able to put together, because today, I think within the country, we all need to realize that learning is not a static phenomenon. We are in a world which is changing very rapidly. We are in a world in which every situation is dynamic. Today doesn't repeat itself tomorrow. And the problems of today, by the time we catch up with them, the problems of tomorrow have changed qualitatively, and we have to be prepared to be able to understand this. Emerging technologies and evolving human psychology, which has to keep up with these emerging technologies, big data functions that we have to deal with, have fundamentally changed the way we think, and we have no option but to continue this real learning process. I used to, in the Department of Audit that I had the privilege of serving for 6 years, keep discussing with my officers what is the human capital of the department, and as far as you all are concerned, of this great country. Human capital is you and I, who have to keep upgrading ourselves, who have to continue to ensure that we are not only good, we are better than the rest in the world. And considering the fact that the median age of this country is 26 years, we have to keep upgrading this human capital in the years that we have to ensure that this country, we put it onto a path from which there is no looking back. And we have no other option but to respond in rapid fire kind of situation. Now, I do not want to dwell upon issues on which you have been hearing people speak. with whom you have interacted yesterday and are going to be interacting in the course of today also, you know enough and much more on those things, the organizations that you run, because the very fact that you have come here to participate in this event yesterday and today is evidence of the fact that you think that there is more to imbibe. And not imbibing from people who are speaking from this rostrum, but imbibing by interaction with each other, because each of you come from similar kind of organization where it's nothing but the process of learning, the process of organizational development, and most importantly, the skill of leadership that you have to imbibe amongst each other. And these are the only skills which will ensure sustainable economic growth for this country. You are in that crucible where you have to incubate, you have to nurture people who are with you, maybe younger in age, maybe sometimes older in age from what you people are. But you are in that situation, that remarkable situation where you are able to mold them. You are in a situation where you can ensure that going forward, their skills are honed in such a fashion that they are able to withstand any situation that arises in days to come. And hence, it's new corporate and public leadership skills that you have to imbibe. Now, there's huge amount of knowledge around. We are in a paradigm which is churning. A new paradigm is emerging. And I think we have much to learn, not from my generation, but generations probably one removed from me, or generations which are Mr. Kumar Baghrodia's generation. Why? That this generation is far more discerning, far more demanding. They are going to hold each one of us accountable for the actions that we take. And it's very imperative, it's critical today that we are able to ensure that the energies of this generation are focused in a direction which will be good for the sustainability of growth of this country. If we are not able to do it, believe me, if we are not able to do it, there's just far too much at stake in this country, and it's for far too many people. We are at that cusp, we are at that situation where we cannot make a mistake. So I do not want to dwell upon organizational skills. I will take 10 minutes more just to explain to you what it is in a larger space, that of government, that of governance, that of the nation. We live in a very vibrant democracy, a parliamentary democracy, where you and I elect our representative. We put that representative into the legislature or the parliament. And in doing so, we delegate to him, we hand over our trust to him to govern us. It is a fiduciary trust. It's a trust which we wholeheartedly bestow upon them and expect that they will neither belie that trust nor will they, in the actions that they take, ever forget the man on the street who probably is not well endowed as you and I are assembled here today. Now, if we don't see this happening, what do we do? Believe me, you have henceforth no option but to speak up. Days of what this country believed, or the world believed, is an expression which I think we need to debunk today. That is the myth of what I would call the silent majority. The majority cannot afford to remain silent anymore. We were all cozy in our environments, thinking whatever is happening is not happening to me, it's happening somewhere else. If it happened to me, well, okay, I'll withstand it today, I'll withstand it tomorrow. As a result of all that, our appetite to sustain or endure wrongdoing, irregularities, and I'm using a strong word, malfeasance, has become so huge that unless it has not really touched us to the core, we do not react. And that's what I said. The majority does not, but time has come when the majority must debunk the myth of what is known as a silent majority. Because far too many people in whom we reposed trust have not been able to stand up to the trust that we in our hearts and our minds had for them. So, well, Dr. Khandelwal referred to the book. The book was written for the sole purpose of addressing it to, we are auditors, we conduct audits, we put our audit reports into Parliament, and what happens? Once we have plugged that report into Parliament, it's full stop. How many of us get to know what's contained in them? There is media attention for a day, 2 days, maybe some television channel will pick it up, there'll be a debate, 2 debates. How many of us follow those channels? But as you and I, from whom money is being taken for the coffers of the government to the treasury, there is an element of compulsion in taking that money. And what's that element of compulsion? The tax. You and I do not have an option. We have to pay the tax. Don't we deserve to know how that money is being spent on our behalf, that money which has been taken from us? To that extent, I think, at the least we felt in my department, that we need to sensitize public opinion on how government was spending money, especially in the social sectors, health, primary education, pollution, etc. I mean, it's okay, government was spending on defense, government was spending on space, maybe government was spending on lots of other issues. The common man really is not so concerned with those things. It's hoped that space programs, atomic energy programs, defense programs, DRDO programs will be carried out to the best that the government can do, but issues which affect you and me. And we found, I've pointed out 5 case studies where 5 different kinds of failures took place. Spectrum, you're so familiar about. What was it all about? Rules, procedures were given the go-by. Goalposts were shifted. Everybody knew what was happening. Everybody in government who should have known knew what was happening. And yet, we could not activate a system by which it could be stopped. And what finally emerged was cronyism of a kind which this country has had to face over the last so many years. Cronyism is okay if the crony who gets a license or gets a contract actually delivers. Maybe you and I can shut our eyes to it. But a crony who neither has the domain knowledge, and that will happen if you give a real estate man a license to run a telecom company, or a crony who does not have the financial muscle to be able to implement it, and ultimately gets financially so heavily over-leveraged that all these loans are lying today in corporate debt restructuring or are constituting the huge NPAs of banks. Why could we not stop this process from unfolding itself? And what's the explanation? The explanation is that, well, it would have disturbed the government, it would have disturbed the coalition, and hence, on that altar of compulsions of coalition politics, it was allowed to unfold in the way it has unfolded. Should the government subjugate the nation to the compulsions of coalition politics, which means just to remain in power? That's a question I think you and I need to ask ourselves. And as I have been saying, it's not a question of 1,76 crores or 1,84 crores or whatever it is. Are you in a position to stand before the mirror and say, yes, no wrong was ever committed? And that's a question we need to ask ourselves. Look at the Commonwealth Games. We had an opportunity of creating history. We did it in the 1982 Asiad. We did a very good Asiad Games. We did a good Commonwealth Games too, but look at the kind of adverse publicity that we got for ourselves. Tons of government money is given into the hands of an organizing committee who has no accountability to government. And you are giving 20,000 crores, 25,000 crores, and you want to study how to conduct games. We sent a 140-member team to Australia, where the previous Commonwealth Games had been conducted. That model of governance was available to us, which means by an act of parliament, a department was created. A minister was mandated to deliver the Commonwealth Games. And he was reporting directly to the Prime Minister. And here we have an unofficial body in which 19 different departments are involved. 16 different venues have to be created. No cohesiveness. I was just wondering, when Swamiji was speaking, where were these roots which were dovetailing with each other and binding with each other? None. We were all operating in silos. Here was this nation crying for a leader to emerge, take over this overarching responsibility of these 16 or 19 different departments and ensure coordination to deliver an exemplary Commonwealth Games. We couldn't do it. And that was, look at the coal story. The coal story where in 2004, the problem was made known to the powers that be. The decision that was taken was an absolutely right decision, which means henceforth, make it transparent, make it the process market-driven, make it absolutely equitable to everybody, so that the process can withstand the test of scrutiny. But till today, that process has not been able to be put into position. A decision was taken on the 1st of November 2004. We continue to allot coal mines by the old process. We gave mines, 57 of them in that intervening period, and in 56 of those 57 mines, some of you may be present here today, I don't know, the first spade has not been driven to commence the process of mining. And believe me, it's not only because clearances were not obtained. What was the hurry to allot those mine blocks? And we talk of judicial activism. Obviously, in the process of governance, you have three elements: the legislature, the executive, which is the government, and the judiciary. Governance is what I would call a non-zero-sum game. If any one of these three pillars cede space, the other one will automatically move into that space and fill it up. And when a judiciary looks at these issues, the judiciary is not going to look at the larger macroeconomic aspects of its decision. It's not going to look and wonder what will be the disruption that will be caused in the power sector. It is not going to look at what is the reserves of coal that this country has, 15 days, 20 days, 30 days. The judiciary is going to look at it purely from its own legalistic aspect. Rules, procedures, acts, whether they've been followed or not, but that's its duty. So they will obviously, if we have failed in fulfilling something, why should the judiciary step into those aspects which we should have taken care of when these were being done? We run public sector. One such remarkable public sector is Air India. I don't know if anyone from Air India is represented here. The guardians of the public sector, who are supposed to look after the interests, are the ones who in some ways failed this public sector enterprise. A public sector enterprise, or any enterprise which needs to be a board-driven institution, organization, where professionalism is available at the board level or below that, is allowed or allows itself to be dictated by people sitting in government. Why? Why do you have independent directors on the board? Maybe these are appointed by government, that's right. But what do you lose in raising your voice and voicing your concern? At most, you will not be reappointed. And most of the people who are on those boards have no stakes. I mean, it's not a question of your livelihood. At the most, you will cease to be on that board. But we need to realize that if we raise that voice, believe me, that voice is not a voice in the wilderness. It's not a single voice. These aggregates of these voices ultimately constitute nationhood. And aggregates of these voices are the ones who shape the destiny of any country. And I think to that extent, if the guidance which was being given from anywhere else was not appropriate, which means you are purchasing aircraft with resources which are 97% borrowed resources on loan, which organization can make it commercially viable? And everybody was pointing this out. Nobody heeded it. Issues were pushed through, and you know where Air India stands. Now, I do not want to dwell further on any of these issues. I'm sure each one of you are aware of what has been happening. My point is just this, that it did not require Swamiji to be present here today, or for him to have listened to that forester in that redwood forest. I didn't know it myself, Swamiji, that the roots hold hands underground. And if they hold hands, they become so broad, so widespread, that toppling the tree in a storm or a typhoon becomes just about impossible, because underground the network has become so strong that each is providing force to the other, providing strength to the other, is buttressing each one of itself. So I think while you are in the process of learning today, and you have voluntarily come here today, I think I need to compliment each one of you for being present here, because I sincerely believe that you are here because you are realizing that learning is a process which is continuing. And you can never, ever claim that I know everything about everything, because the world is overtaking us. And I said earlier that if this country has to develop and develop a sustainable path over the years, and we have to make that man on the street, 1/6 of the population of the world is in India, and 40% of this is below the poverty line. If we have to be fair to that person on the street, I think we need to realize the challenge which faces us today. And believe me, while I conclude, I would like to just leave behind a message to you to say that when posterity judges you, let it not be said that you had all the opportunities, you had all the facilities, all the training, all the learning, but when the challenge arose, you were found wanting. That will be a great tragedy for this nation. We cannot afford a situation like that. For us, there is no time. We are at a cusp where the situation is becoming critical. And as I said earlier, there is far, far too much at stake and for far too many people in this country. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and listening to me so patiently. It's been wonderful speaking to you. Thank you.